Welcome, everyone. We're excited to have all of you here tonight for another one of our Empower Hour sessions. Tonight, we're going to focus on sort of just the union basics, the organizing basics of getting through this process of having representation in your workplace. And the reason we're doing that is that we've had several new parks and programs come online for organizing. And then also the Midwest region has started organizing not in the not so distant past. And so we want to just kind of give a overview of how this process goes and give you a chance to ask questions as we go. Introducing myself, I am Stephanie Snow. I am the NTEU organizer who has been working with the Pacific West region over the last few months to organize. And I have a couple of my colleagues here. Lee Fisher, who you'll be hearing from later, has been the organizer for the Intermountain region. And then Joni Ketter is also on, I believe, tonight. And Joni has been working with the Midwest region and also with the Alaska region as we move into organizing more widely in the National Park Service. So welcome, everyone. We're glad to see you. And those of you who are watching the recording later, we're glad that you're joining us as well. So our agenda tonight, we're just going to go through the organizing process and talk about each step along the way. We'll give progress updates for the two regions that we've already filed election petitions for, so for the Pacific West region and the Intermountain region. Then we'll go into talking a little bit about the benefits of being in the union, being part of the union. We will give some examples of items that we have negotiated for our other NPS chapters who are already organized with NTEU. So we'll be taking a little look at their some of the things they've negotiated in their collective bargaining agreement. And then we'll just talk about next steps and give some time at the end for questions and answers. If you have any questions as we go along, please just drop those in the chat and we'll make sure to either address those along the way or at the end. So here's just a kind of a broad overview of the steps to organizing or the steps to winning your union contract, a collectively bargained agreement. And we are well along our way for the Pacific West and the Intermountain region that we have filed petitions for. But this process is important, even if you are not part of that initial petition that we've signed. We will be talking about how you can be added into the effort as a new park or a new program or starting from scratch organizing. So we'll take these step by step a little bit here. NTEU typically doesn't just go out looking for places to organize. We wait for interested employees to come to us. We have a lot of employee groups who express interest in organizing. And so that's how the organizing starts. It starts with a group of interested individuals who are part of, an agency who come to us and want to find out more. And so, of course, that's, where we are in the process with organizing our NPS, new NPS efforts. We have heard from groups from the Pacific West region. We heard from groups from the employees from the Intermountain region, and then also the Midwest and Alaska regions. And so after having those initial discussions, then we on to making this more of a formalized or systematic process through creating an organizing committee. So whatever region you're in, you have an organizing committee that is doing the work, and that committee is made up of your colleagues, employees, who really are on the ground and leading the effort in the workplace at your work site. And those folks are, they're doing this on their own time. And in addition to the work that they do as an NPS employee. And so they're very dedicated and they have done a wonderful job so far of, of spreading the word and letting everyone know that these organizing efforts are going on. and then also gathering signatures that we need in order to
Sorry,
move to the
connected.
next
It
step.
shows it connected.
So the organizing committee has a lot of responsibility to have conversations with their fellow employees, their fellow workers, NPS workers. And in having those conversations, that's where they assess the level of support. Do we have enough people interested to actually make this organizing effort a success and move forward with it? So that's what's been happening since, oh golly, probably May of last year. Lots and lots of conversations have been happening at the various regions and the various parks and historical sites and all of the things, regional offices. Lots of conversation and then lots of reflection on figuring out where we have the biggest support and also where we don't have contacts or where we just don't um, know people and we need to bring other people into the effort or reach out to folks and let them know that we're here for them and we're hoping that they can join us in the organizing effort. And so during those assessment conversations, that's where the organizers come to the point where at some point we need to ask someone to do something. So, we get all of these verbal commitments of, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yes, I'm interested in finding out more information. Count me in. But then we really need to move on to where we get signatures, where we get those 1187 forms. And so you may have already signed one, you may have seen them, or you may have heard talk about them. But the 1187 is really our key piece in order to get to where we need to be to file for an election. And so it is what we call a showing of interest. And that is what we need to demonstrate to the Federal Labor Relations Authority to prove that we have enough interest to actually go forward with an election. And so it also serves a second purpose as a membership form after the election happens. And so we, as NTEU, we shoot for 50% of the bargaining unit to sign 1187 forms. And the reason for that is we want to have a strong support system going into the election, meaning that, if we know that the majority of people are in support of this, then we're likely to prevail in the election. And you'll have a strong union once you're through the election and you set up your chapter. So having that 50% membership threshold helps set your chapter up for success once you start standing up your union and moving forward into collective bargaining. So we achieved that 50% showing, and then we're able to file a petition for election. That petition is filed with the Federal Labor Relations Authority. The FLRA is a third party, neutral party who governs elections for representation and then also um, handles cases, unfair labor practice cases, and things like that. If there would be a situation where contracts are violated, so they are sort of the intermediary that helps us to navigate those processes and exercise our rights to collectively bargain and to elect a representative. So once we file the petition with the FLRA, what happens is the FLRA will accept the petition and then contact both parties, meaning the union and the agency, and will request that the agency provide certain information back to the FLRA. So that information, that documentation includes employee list of who's eligible and who's not eligible to be in the bargaining unit according to what the agency thinks. Also, one of the important pieces that they ask for is the agency's response to the bargaining unit. So when we file that initial petition, we provide a description of the bargaining unit and who we are petitioning for and who should be included in that bargaining unit. And then the agency has an opportunity to respond to the unit that we've described. And so they can either agree with the unit, which is, what we always hope for, or sometimes they will have challenges to certain either parts of the bargaining unit or the bargaining unit as a whole. And if they do, then they can lodge that challenge in writing, and we discuss that at the first phone call between all three parties. So a phone call, a conference call is set up between all of the parties to talk about the makeup of the bargaining unit. And then also once that bargaining unit is settled, once we have both sides agree to the bargaining unit, then we schedule dates for an election. The election is a secret ballot, so nobody knows if or how you vote. The FLRA administers the election, so it's not handled by the union or by the agency. It's a neutral third party. There are different ways that the FLRA can handle an election. In this case, it will be an electronic election, most likely, just because of geography and the way the NPS employees are spread out geographically. So if it is an electronic election, you will receive a ballot in the mail to your home address. And in that packet that you receive, it gives you a PIN code or a PIN number to when you go online or on the phone to vote. You enter your individual PIN number, and then it takes you through the process of voting electronically. But the initial ballot does come by U.S. Postal Service, and so that means that we need to have a pretty big window for the election to happen, just to make sure that everybody gets ballots and has the opportunity to vote. So usually the elections, when they're electronic, are open for 3 to 4 weeks to allow all of that process to happen. Once everyone receives their ballot and gets a chance to vote and the election closes, then the votes are tallied by the FLRA and the parties are notified as to the results of the election. And as I said earlier, we shoot for 50%. So, going into the election, we're hopefully very confident that we'll win that election. And so in the interim time, we're starting to talk about what the chapter will look like, who your field rep will be, all of those things, so that once your union is certified, once the election results become official, you can hit the ground running in terms of a functioning chapter. And so, working on your bylaws, putting in how you're going to conduct business as a union, and then moving on to talking about representation and contract negotiations. So I do think it's important to mention in this process that once your union is certified, even if you do not have a contract, the agency does have an obligation to contact the union and discuss any changes in working conditions. And so from the get-go, as soon as your union is certified, you do have some representation rights, and the agency can't make broad sweeping changes without consultation with the union. But ultimately, we hope that we will get to negotiating a contract. And so your chapter will reach out and gather information from all of the members and different parts and things to decide what are the issues or what are the articles that they want to work on putting into contract language, into a negotiated contract. And then finally, you'll go to contract negotiations. So there'll be sessions where the union, your union, will meet and negotiate with the agency over that contract. And then finally, once you have your contract written and you've negotiated it, you take it back to the membership for ratification. So there's a lot of stopgaps along the way where members have input into the process. Members have input into what issues or what articles go into the contract. Members have input into your bylaws and your local dues amounts. Members can vote on all of those things. And then finally, the members get the final vote on whether or not they accept or ratify the negotiated contract. So, talking about where we are in our current campaigns, for the Pacific West region, we filed our petition with the FLRA on December 12th. That petition includes 12 parks, monuments, programs, and also the Pacific West Regional Office. And the bargaining unit is about 600, give or take, eligible employees. So that was filed in December. We had our initial due date for the agency to provide all those documents that I mentioned earlier was a date in January. However, the agency asked for an extension, which is common that they'll ask for an extension. So they were given, I believe, a 2-week extension, and the due date for that information was this last Friday on February 6th. And so they did provide their response to the bargaining unit. They did issue some challenges to the bargaining unit that we are going through right now and preparing, arguments and responses, rebuttals to those challenges. We do not have our follow-up phone call for PWR scheduled yet. That's to be determined. But I would expect that we should be finding out the date to that anytime now. And since we have not had that initial phone call and the agency has lodged a few challenges to the bargaining unit, we have not yet determined an election date. So if you are, a PWR employee, that information will be coming soon. The to be determined dates, hopefully we can be updating you soon. But we continue to organize even as this process is working its way through. So we're still gathering signatures at the parks and programs that were included in the petition, the initial petition. But we are also looking at parks that maybe just didn't quite make it onto the first petition. They weren't quite at their 50%. And so working to get those folks to 50% now, so that after our union is certified, we can start having what we call add-on elections. And so we would have an election for a group of parks that reach their 50% sometime between now and when we have our election. And then we would petition again for another election just for those parks to be added into the chapter that's established with this first petition and first election. So we have a few that are closing in on that 50%. And I would hope that by the time that we certify this first group, this first unit, we'll be able to turn right back around and file for some additional parks to be added into that unit. And I did include the organizing email for the Pacific West region. It's just pwrunion@gmail.com. So if you need to reach out to one of the organizers, you can contact me always, but you can also use that email, and we can loop you in to whoever you need to talk to. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lee to give you an update on where the Intermountain region is.
Awesome. All right. Let me see if I can. Okay, perfect. Do you want to move to the next slide? Perfect. Okay. Hey, folks. I am Lee Fisher. Like Stephanie said, I've been working with the Intermountain region. So to give a quick update, and then we're going to get into, like we said at the beginning, more of the benefits of the union, examples of our contracts. But so IMR, 12 park units across the Intermountain region filed for an election back in November. That covered around 750 employees. After many delays, these lists were due at the end of the year, but we did get them in January as well as the NPS position, kind of their statement on the election. The NPS has raised objections to whether they think this grouping of employees and for some other different reasons are appropriate. They haven't raised objections specifically saying that they don't think NPS employees should be able to have a union. It's more kind of administrative around what that grouping looks like, what the process looks like, and how that all gets decided. So, as of this point, it looks like the Federal Labor Relations Authority, the FLRA, is going to be weighing in and making a decision on this, whether it's through a hearing or whether that's through an investigation only. We don't know yet. We're waiting on that. So over the coming weeks, we're going to see where that goes. NTEU feels really strongly in our position that these employees should be unionizing in this configuration. But ultimately, it is up to the FLRA, not the NPS or NTEU. But we will have our opportunity to make our arguments. So we'll keep folks updated, especially people who are in those 12 park units that are heading towards election. But in the meantime, just like PWR, we're continuing to organize in those 12 park units, but beyond. We have one additional park unit that's reached their 50%, and many others that are continuing to organize. Right now, we've got 12 active park units that are organizing, and the potential at the rest of them. Total left in the Intermountain region are 1,300 employees that are still eligible across those 12 plus even more parks and park units across IMR. So just like Stephanie said, for PWR, we are looking to do add-on elections once we get through this first election that we may be delayed a little bit, but we still feel confident that we're getting through and that we are going to win with a strong showing. And so IMR employees are continuing to organize, and the current organizing committee wants to help support you. So if you're in an Intermountain region park or park unit or office, you can reach out. The website is there below. Or the email address to reach out to organizers, NPS employees, just like you all who are on the ground in these parks doing the organizing, or at the end of the slide deck, we will have contact information for all of the NTEU staff who are working as well. But there's a lot of support there so that you can get started and not alone. So moving on, we want to start to talk about kind of why are employees uh, organizing? Why build a union? Why now? What are the benefits? So we've talked a lot already tonight about collective bargaining agreements. That contract that employees bargain together with management of the agency really becomes such an important document that covers kind of what a work handbook would cover. It codifies existing laws and then goes beyond that to expand the rights of federal employees in a given area. Collective bargaining agreements can be as broad or as narrow as we need them to be. We don't want them so specific that we get forced into a specific situation for a long time, but we need to have language that's clear to understand. Sometimes there are parts of contracts that only apply to some employees or some area of employees. So we have the ability to have nuance within a contract. And we can bargain over such a wide range of things. Even though for NPS employees, we can't bargain over your wages or retirement contributions and health contributions, we can bargain over so many things that do put money back into your pockets or keep it in your pockets, like award funding and uh, uniform and boot stipends, uh, how housing impacts you, um, uh, scheduling. Oh, we've had we may talk about it in a bit, but a long grievance for in the maintenance area and the National Capital Region around schedules being changed around to avoid overtime payments. And we won that grievance and ended up getting lots of money back for people in that overtime payment that had been avoided. So, in addition to things that put money in your pockets, things that help make sure you stay safe and healthy, making sure that you have health and safety requirements and that we have ongoing discussions with the agency to continually adjust what that looks like. In the National Capital Region, again, we've worked on the Washington Monument multiple times, have had that shut down for health and safety reasons, as well as repairing equipment there with some of the machines that maintenance uses, as well as heating and cooling situations in various offices. So there's a wide variety of things that we can negotiate, and that's not exhaustive. But your contract does become a really big part of your life as a union member. But an equally big part of your life as a union member is the community that you build, not just when you get past the election, from the very beginning, right now, as you are talking with your coworkers and you're starting to get to know each other on a different level and having conversations that maybe you haven't had before, and learning more about what's at stake for each other, what your families actually look like and what you're depending upon, what it looks like season after season to not have stability, talking about that and having conversations and then building a vision for what the future could look like that's better. Is the beginning of you building a community. I'm really excited. Our next Empower Hour, next in 2 weeks, is going to be about how many of NPS employees who've been heading to election have been building that community and taking care of each other even before they have an official union. Being able to stand up to their boss and be able to kind of have a voice on the job, but also how to meet the needs of people in their communities. So we're going to be talking about that. Uh, in 2 weeks at our next Empower Hour, more about this community aspect, but not just in amongst your colleagues, but also the relationships that you build with the agency over time. We hope to be able to resolve problems without having to use formal processes like our grievance procedure, which is how we resolve problems with the agency in a formal way at kind of the lowest level possible, resolving higher until we can get a resolution and ultimately being able to go to arbitration. But when we build a relationship over time, we get to the point where your chapter president can call someone in the agency and say, "Hey, I heard you're about to make this decision. You know, you need to bargain with us first." And can talk things through and be able to reach resolution without having to file grievances. That's a really big part of increasing morale and creating a workplace that actually feels cooperative. Um, in the meantime, the agency cannot make changes to your working conditions or terms of employment without bargaining with the union first once we've won that election. Like Stephanie was mentioning, from that moment that we are certified as exclusive union before we even have a contract, but then throughout the life of the contract. If there's anything that's not covered in the language of that contract, we still get to bargain over it if they want to make changes. And so this is a really big power, and it's actually a lot of the work that your union ends up doing is making sure that you have a voice in all of the different ways that the agency is looking to change things on the ground for you, even outside of that contract. So I started to talk about some things, but a lot of the issues that we hear out in the campaign, in parks, in offices, in at historical monuments and recreation areas, are the things that your coworkers, your colleagues in other agencies, as well as the NPS units that we already represent in the Washington Support Office and the National Capital Region. Things like scheduling and telework. I always forget what are on my next slides, but I might talk about it. But just in case, telework is a really great one to bring up because we have now recently, even just this year, had major victories around telework. Our contracts actually provide for pretty generous telework, including in the WASO office, 100% unlimited telework in some cases. However, both the past administration and current administration in various places had issued orders for people to come back into the office more than our contract provided. And so we used the grievance procedure that I just mentioned to try and resolve that problem. But ultimately, the agency didn't agree with us and said that it was above their head. They were being told that they had to bring people back into the office. And so we ultimately took that case to arbitration. That it isn't necessarily the quickest process, but I mean, relatively, in the scheme of things, our Washington case, that WASO case, I think was maybe October of last year, and we got a Oh no, October, not of 25. I'm forgetting we're in 26. October of 24. And in the early summer of 25, we got an arbitrator's award that we were in the right and that the agency had to reinstate all of those telework agreements. Same thing happened in the National Capital Region just a few months later. So we are excited that even during this time, we are seeing big victories and holding steady to the contract that we've negotiated, including things like uniform allowances, language around how promotions are handled, and career ladder steps, what that looks like, and transparency and fairness around how those things are applied, how awards are applied, details, all of those things, assignment of tasks. I mentioned health and safety, and then wanting to make sure that uh, the mission that you all have signed up to protect, that you all dedicate your lives to, that I know you all care about, NTEU cares about that mission too. And so we have a really strong legislative department that works to lobby Congress on the things that matter to employees of those agencies to ensure that agencies get the funding that they deserve and that employees need to carry out those missions. And I know that the questions are always going to be there about, well, what about seasonal employees? There are a lot of different ways that your union can, one, represent you, and two, help provide stability. Whether it's ensuring that you have the information for what benefits are available to you, what processes you need to utilize, but also advocating for new systems for consistency for seasonals. We, NTEU, represent the IRS employees, including seasonal employees there. We've represented them for many decades. And over the many years, we have created, through bargaining, a professionalized seasonal employment where employees are essentially um more similar to career seasonals, but have even more consistency and ability to accrue benefits, and know their recall and their end dates, and can plan their lives around such. We want to be able to help amplify the voice of seasonal employees, and ensure that seasonal employees are not just used uh, uh, to accomplish kind of the needs of the agency without actually getting the respect and dignity and care that they deserve. So, I've probably talked about some of these, but here are a bunch of examples of contract language and uh, wins that we have had over the years. So, these are real contract language from the Washington Support Office in National Capital Region. Information around holidays, around how overtime and telework and remote work are handled, making sure that there is adequate funding for uniforms when pregnant employees need to change uniforms, making sure that there's time for health and safety, for fitness. This is also similar language that
Your allowing form or just mine?
the
What she
we
said.
um, uh, we represent some other agencies that have law enforcement employees, like the FLETC, and Customs and Border Protection. Similar language around fitness and health. And then awards I mentioned earlier, and details. So these are just a sample of language that we can negotiate into contracts. There's a wide range more that we can negotiate. Oh, right, we have a couple more. So kind of breaking down some that maybe are even more impactful for folks. So hours of work, um, making sure that your schedule is not arbitrarily changed, and that you can plan life around this. This is especially in for non-seasonal employees who and in regional offices, where your work is potentially the same, or can be planned out day by day. Making sure that there's leave without pay opportunities, so that people do not have to choose between their work and taking care of a personal situation. Um, Making sure that positions are stay within what you are told your working conditions are going to be, and that you are doing the work that you were hired for. And if not, there's different ways that we can handle that, whether there's desk audits to see if your work has changed and maybe you're doing the work of a higher graded position, or if we need to bargain over a change in your working conditions. Just as example. And then tuition reimbursement is something that we have in a lot of our contracts, well, I think we probably have this in all of our contracts at this point, codifying the existing laws around tuition reimbursement, but having this in our contract allows us to hold the agency accountable in a different way, and potentially over time add funding to such. So if right now you're thinking, okay, I either want to know more or I know enough and I want to make sure that we can get the protections of a union, and you want to know how you get involved, there's a couple of really easy steps. The first one, if you have not already signed your 1187, that's the very first and most important thing that you can do to show your support for having a union. Like Stephanie explained at the beginning, with the process, we cannot get to filing for an election without that 50% of people signing this 1187. So do that first. You can go to nteu.org/NPS, and you'll see a button that says sign your 1187. You can click on that. It will send you you will enter your email and it will send you a secure link. You can sign online, military grade encryption. So that's the first step. If you want to make sure that this actually happens, then you need to get involved. Join the organizing committee, a group of people who are making sure that this actually happens, that we have goals, that we've reached them, and that we're building something that is long-standing. We provide all of the training along the way and the support. You get work with one of us organizers, and you get to jump into a pretty amazing community of other NPS employees who want to make a better future. And then together, you all are going to talk to your coworkers. Uh, you cannot do this alone. You need everyone to join together to one, so that we can reach that 50%, but two, so that we know that we're hearing the voices of everyone and can make your union as strong as possible. So talk to your coworkers about what you learned tonight, about what you're hoping for, and what your questions are. Okay, so again, reminder to sign the 1187, nteu.org/NPS. And again, that is a secure site. You'll get an email back confirming that you signed it, but you can always reach out to any of the organizers and we can confirm that we have it. We do not release the information of who has signed 1187s to anyone except for the organizing committee. The agency will not know if you've signed your 1187. This is a secret form until the point that we have won an election and we're submitting those 1187s for dues processing. But until that point, and that's going to a payroll office, not to your home park unit. Until that point, these are a secret form, and it is secure. You also can fill out a paper form and get that to the organizing committee at your local park, or sign a paper form and scan it and send it to any of the organizers. So if you have more questions or you want to get involved, you can reach out to any of the organizing staff who are working with the various regions, or the organizers, NPS employees themselves, at the emails that you see here. So again, for Intermountain Region, that's myself, Lee Fisher, Lee Fisher at NTEU.org, or send me a text or call me, or reach out to the IMR employees at imrunionorg.committee@gmail.com. If you're in the Pacific West, you can reach out to Stephanie Snow at stephanie.snow@nteu.org, or the email there, or phone number. Or you can reach out to the PWR employees that are on the organizing committee at the pwrunion@gmail.com. Or if you're in the Midwest region or in Alaska, you can reach out to organizing director Joni Ketter at joni.ketter@nteu.org. And with that, we can open this up for questions. And I think there were already some questions in the chat getting answered.
So if you have a question on your mind and you want to just raise your hand, you can do that and ask out loud. Or if you'd rather do it more anonymously, you can drop your question in the chat and we'll get to those questions. Thank you, Nick, for fielding a lot of those questions that have been popping up in the chat as we've been going. Miranda.
Hey there, thanks for taking some time to put this presentation on. I work at Voyageurs National Park, and I'm actually scheduled to talk to a group of maintenance employees with permission of their supervisor before they start work this Wednesday. They're a good group of folks, but they do tend to be a little more skeptical, I suppose would be the right phrase. And I'm trying to think of questions that they would have. And I think the biggest one that I'm going to get that I honestly don't know how to answer at the moment is, wow, okay, so that's the dues, or that's the example of the dues. So where does my money go to? What is it used for every single pay period? And I mean, I can answer that generally, but I was a little surprised that I couldn't find like specific info on NTEU's website. So I was curious, is there a way to get a printout of financials or anything like that so I can help address that?
So there are a couple of things. Every union, local, or we call them chapters, is required to file financial statements every year through the Department of Labor. It's a little bit of a cumbersome process too, but if you wanted to look up a specific local or chapter's information, you can do that. That is information that's publicly available. I don't believe NTEU generally publishes those, but where your dues go is to run your union. The majority of dues that are collected go to national. Your chapter will keep a portion of those dues. And if you're looking at a dues sample chart, you'll see actually that the dues rate includes your chapter dues. And your dues go to paying staff, to making sure that we have buildings, that we can print out contracts and pay electric bills. But they also make sure that we can take cases to arbitration. They make sure that we can take cases to court. Right now, NTU has a wide variety of cases in court against the current administration. And a lot of the money doesn't get spent. It is held in bank accounts to make sure that you have the funds that you need if you do have to take on big fights. It looks like Joni wants to add more, so go for it.
Yeah, thanks. You did a really nice job of answering that question. Yeah, we don't generally publicize, our financials. No union does. And just like every other union, the majority of our budget every year goes towards staff. The union is you, right? We're here as support for you. And so you're looking at like a few of the very few non-attorneys at NTEU. That makes us very different from other unions as well. You're going to have an attorney assigned to work with you on a day-to-day basis. You're not going to get that anyplace else. And so what you're getting basically is expertise from us. I mean, you're also going to get other things, right? Like information. You're going to get regular email updates on things that are going on in the federal government. You're going to get a print newsletter that comes in the mail to you. I mean, those are, they're important, don't get me wrong, but really what you're getting is the day-to-day support of experts in labor law, specifically geared toward federal employees. And yeah, I can't say really anything more than that, but honestly, that's where the majority of it goes. Now, that's not to say that it's just, the attorneys, right? Like you're looking at I don't know how many years of experience the three of us have, but I know in our department it's over 100 years of combined experience, and there's only one other person. So that tells you we've been doing this for a long time. But we also have a great legislative department. So on your behalf, every single day, we have people on Capitol Hill lobbying for funding for your agencies, for, making sure that, well, we're trying to make sure that the DOI is doing the right thing with their consolidation. And then we have an Office of General Counsel. So in addition to the attorneys that work with you every day, have another group of attorneys who file lawsuits on behalf of federal employees all the time. And so that's where your dues money goes. If you get riffed and you're a member, you have automatic access to a labor attorney to represent you in front of the, and I always get the letters mixed up, the MSPB. The MSPB. Yes, I had somebody tell me that they were afraid of being riffed and reached out to a labor attorney and they wanted $10,000 retainer. And he's like, yeah, I'd much rather pay my $20 a pay period in union dues and have the same sort of representation. So that's where your dues go. Sorry, I didn't mean to okay, I'm going to lower my hand now.
Yeah, no. That's super helpful. And yeah, like I said, please don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to get on anybody's case. It's genuine, just asking for information and wanting to.
No, and I totally get it. Like, I live in Minnesota. I know what you're up against up north. I totally understand.
Would it be okay if I asked one more question?
Of course.
So, one of the other things that I think that I've had some other folks ask before, and I'm like 90% sure I know the answer, but let's say we do end up getting a union up here, and we do become part of the MWR NTEU chapter. What if somebody wants out? I mean, can they elect to not be part of the union when they join the NPS? Like, how does that work if somebody decides, you know what, this wasn't for me, or I just can't afford it, even though I want to, is there an option for somebody who's in that situation?
Of course, and Lee actually responded to a question in the chat at the very beginning. So there are no union mandatory membership requirements in the federal government. So even if, Voyagers becomes part of the MWR bargaining unit, right, nobody is going to be required to become a member and pay dues. Okay, it's completely voluntary. It's just like you can't strike. I mean, there are just certain things in law, when Congress decided to grant the right to organize unions to federal employees, it came with some strings attached. And one of the strings is you can't be forced to join the union. So nobody is forced to join. Nobody is forced to pay dues. Of course, the more people that do, the stronger your union is. So we encourage everyone who can and who wants a strong union to do so, but there's no requirement.
Super helpful. Thank you. I'm pretty sure that'll sell them.
Good. But we still need them to sign that 1187 just so that we can get that election going.
So just to go like a step further, for those folks that don't know me, I'm a Joshua Tree, just another park employee. But the union is required to represent you if you're in a bargaining unit that has elected to join the union. And they have that relationship where they're required to represent employees to a basic level and make sure that the contract's being followed and things like that. So the folks that can't afford to pay dues are still getting a lot of those benefits. They're not going to necessarily have like that direct access to a lawyer kind of relationship that if you like have something extensive that is needed, then that might come up of like we can't offer this to non-dues paying members. But my understanding is that like they are required by law, right? Right, Johnny, to provide a basic level of representation to everyone.
That's correct. Yes. So it's called the duty of fair representation. So we have the duty to represent our contract and the people that contract covers. So anyone that would be considered part of the bargaining unit. And then members would have some access beyond that basic duty of fair representation.
It looked like there are a couple of questions about when you can talk about organizing. I'm going to answer those out loud since the recording won't capture the chat. Um, but this has largely been answered in the chat. You can talk about the union kind of like you would talk about your weekend. So if you go to work tomorrow and someone's like, "Hey, what'd you do last night?" You can say, "Oh, I attended a union meeting." But you want to make sure that if you are asking anyone to join or talking about that you've joined the union, anything kind of talking about membership, you want to save that for break time before work, during a break, on a lunch break, or after work, or outside of work. But you can be at work and talk about the union. Just like if you were working alongside someone and we're talking about how you can make improvements to whatever project you're currently working on. You can talk about the improvements that you would want to make with a union. But again, the soliciting, the asking people to join is that key point that we want to make sure that people are only doing on non-work time. So an easy way to do that is to say, "Hey, I'm going to take a break. Do you have a moment?" And then you're both on a break and you can talk about the union. You can ask someone to sign an 1187 at the time, either handing them a paper form or pulling up the website or asking them to pull it up on their phone so they can do it right then.
Another thing that was brought up in the chat is, one way you can recoup on some of the expense you put out in dues is to utilize the programs that NTEU provides for members. And so there are lots of discount programs, just ways you can save money here and there. But the one that I kind of wanted to highlight was we have a partnership with a company that will sit down with you and help you plan your retirement. And so, those types of things you can get access to through NTEU that can help you plan for your future and help you be ready when you're ready to retire. I know that many, many, many of our members utilize that service and find it very helpful for preparing for retirement.
Hey, Stephanie, is there any kind of like fact sheet or something that we could share with folks? I've had some like specifically that question about maintenance employees. I've had them specifically ask me about like, all right, I want to see it on paper, what I'm getting, what those discounts are and stuff like that. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, we have a member benefits flyer that I can locate and get to you. I don't know if I'd be able to locate the link right now and to get in this chat, but we can get that out. Yes.
Awesome.
Let's try to put that on the NPS page too.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's not
Yeah.
there currently.
Yeah, we should do that.
yeah. I mean, we do have a NPS landing page on our website, so you can go there just to get kind of general information. And that's also where Lee was saying you could go to sign the 1187. But that chart, the process chart is on that page. And other just, basically some sample dues charts, things like that. So that's the NTEU.org slash NPS. That's the landing page for NPS employees on the NTEU website. We're right at our hour mark, and so I'll give another minute or two for anybody who has a lingering question, or if there's something that we haven't already answered, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for tonight. As Lee said, we do have another Empower Hour session in 2 weeks on the 23rd, February 23rd. And it will be delving more into what it looks like to start acting like a union and start advocating for members. And we'll have some guests from our other chapters and chapters from another agency who are relatively new and standing up their chapters. And so they can talk about the process of how they started representing members and their experiences. And those chapters are also DOI agency. So we have folks from Bureau of Land Management, our chapters from Bureau of Land Management will be on that Empower Hour. So we hope to see you again. Again, reach out to any of us if you have any questions or anything that did not get answered, or you'd like to get more engaged with organizing. We'd be happy to talk to you. And I thank Joni for being on tonight. And Lee, you can say goodbye if you want. And also, Nick, thank you for your input as well. All right.
Yeah, it's great to see everyone. Thanks for all your questions. Hope we'll see you on the next Empower Hour.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.